All right, we'll watch the Mega Rare. Ready?
GM to YouTube again? The back-to-back blog videos? Okay. So Jagex has just put up a blog about what they're thinking about for potential raids for rewards, including what a potential Mega Rare would look like. If you saw the last video, I was just like, hey, this will be like a future video at some point. We'll talk about this. And then Jagex is like, you know what? You're doing this tomorrow. Okay. Hey, that works for me. The blog is pretty long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take important sentences from paragraphs, kind of jump around a little bit, not read the whole thing because we have things to do, places to be. But besides just, reading the blog, we're also going to be hitting on what makes a Mega Rare and the design philosophy behind Mega Rares and just sort of the overall balance of the game, design wise with rewards, keeping things relevant, that kind of thing. So we'll be hitting on all of that. What they're talking about at the beginning here, we've just scrolled down, is basically a lot of this is vibes coded. We kind of saw it earlier with the Mocha Mage Cape offering. People were not happy with a Mage Cape being offered as a tradable drop from a boss because capes in RuneScape have always been this aspirational content. So they're saying kind of the same thing with raids rewards. There's a lot of stuff that's coded in that's specific to
I never really thought about that. Yeah, a tradable cape in RuneScape kind of is game breaking. I don't think I would want that.
old school RuneScape versus other games, and they're trying to figure out exactly where the player base is at. They say stuff like, you guys will feel kind of the same way about a lot of this stuff, Chambers has too many rewards, Tob feels like it has way too many. Toa has good
Tob
number of rewards, but the rarities could be shifted.
I don't like Tob. I don't even want to go into Tob because I know the only thing I really want from there is Scythe, and I know it's going to be 1,000 runs before I get it, so I just don't even want a Tob. And I don't think that's a good place for a raid to be. And I feel like I would rather do Tob than Cox, but Cox has 10 times more rewards that I need, so I have to do Cox. That's how I feel.
Right? So there's a lot of vibe stuff that people agree on, and they're trying to figure out what the line in the sand is, what the community feels about different stuff. So they have these lines. They say for a Mega Rare, it's an absolute powerhouse, undisputed best in slot use case, a valuable pickup for any player. We think this should probably be a weapon, but we'll dive more into that later. This is generally just the layout they feel that a raid should have, the drops it should have. So for armor set, they say ideally outright best in slot and not too niche, meaning more like Masori and Ancestral than just this year, and 1 to 3 standalone rewards. Strong pickups that don't need to be outright best in slot, but could function very well within a certain niche use case, like Elder Maul, Dins, Osmumpton's Fang, Lightbearer, that kind of thing. Scrolling down a little bit more, they break that down a little bit harder. They say, in general, we believe that Mega Rares should probably be weapons. We've seen suggestions over the years for things like the Turmoil Prayer, a second ring slot, or access to overload potions. And while we agree that these are powerful rewards, we're not sure that they hit the right excitement level when compared to equipping an absolute powerhouse and being able to clearly see it in action in future encounters. I want to add on to this. Not only is it just vibes-wise not super interesting to have a non-weapon, permanent unlocks to your character, if they gave you the recipe for overloads or a permanent Turmoil Prayer unlock or something like that.
Yeah,
yes,
prayer unlock.
Power level would be strong enough to be worthy of being called a Mega Rare, but when you make something a permanent unlock, you kind of have the problem we had with Dex Scrolls and Arcane Scrolls, where there's no resale on these items. You buy it once and it's tied to your account forever. So market-wise, it doesn't work super well either. A lot of people do Mega Rare rebuilds and that kind of thing. How do you do that with an overload recipe or something like that? It doesn't work super well. So generally, I would say you don't really want unlocks being tradable either as a thing. So unlocking a permanent ring slot, I've seen a lot of people suggest that. Don't think it would work super well. Then they say, assuming a weapon is chosen, we leaning into a niche design with a wide range of use cases. The Twisted Bow and Scythe are both niche in that it's easy to design content specifically where they're weak or strong. Shadow is a bit of an outlier here, and that is good everywhere. Magic is good, which has come with no shortage of problems. We're able to lean into this by keeping these items in mind when designing future content if they're falling out of favor. Recent years saw a number of bosses release where the Scythe had more opportunities to shine. Very true. Scythe was really bad for a really long time, and people were like, hey, we've got to give it some use cases. I remember when Toa came out, it was there's no way Scythe doesn't have a use in the entire raid. But then they launched stuff like Colosseum, just more bosses in general where Scythe is good, and now suddenly Scythe is the most expensive Mega Rare. So a lot of stuff with how powerful the weapon is more so, are there bosses where the weapon works well versus how good overall it is? I would say T-Bow and Shadow generally are more powerful than Scythe across the board, but Scythe has recently had a bunch of content added where it's really good, so it's just expensive. They say, well, not mandatory. The big numbers with a slower, usually 5-tick attack rate approach tends to make these items feel impactful. Feeling slow, heavy, super high hitting, hitting massive numbers, just make something feel powerful versus just a raw DPS number that's really fast. Stuff like a blowpipe. Blowpipe is arguably Mega Rare tier value in power, but it doesn't feel the same as a T-Bow, hitting those massive numbers, even if the DPS numbers are very similar. So it depends. Grabbing this line, because I think it's pretty important.
I agree with that, but it's just because T-Bow's a slower tick, right? Blowpipe can technically out DPS it if you get lucky.
Thing for us here is that we feel it's okay for a new Mega Rare to steal some spotlight from an existing one, but there's absolutely a line that shouldn't be crossed, and it's important not to take too much space away from an established and iconic piece of gear. The idea I'm getting behind this is it's okay for a Shadow to come out and become Biss at bosses over stuff like a T-Bow, but you don't want it to just absolutely replace past Mega Rares, which I think I would agree with. Moving on to this line, it's been 9 years since the T-Bow release, a really long time ago. Like,
is this the hardest point in Jagex design history right now? Raids 4, where they have so many items that they're running into a wall and they just don't know what to create. And they're like borderline asking for everyone's help. And we've had discussions, and even we can't really come to a conclusion either on what would be good and what would feel like it's something that the game needs. At this point, it might have to just be a replacement to something that's already there, or a better version of something that's already there. And I mean, we're kind of getting to that point in the game design.
It does not feel like it was 9 years ago, but yeah, it was. Could a ranged weapon that fills a different niche be a good fit to naturally restart the cycle? And they say we don't have answers for these. So, question, like, can we just power creep like past Mega Rares? Can you add T-Bow 2? Can you add Scythe 2? Can you add Shadow 2?
He literally just said what I just said right there. So that's what I'm thinking. Like, at some point, it's going to just have to be Scythe 2. New T-Bow.
Necessarily have to utterly replace it, but be more powerful generally. Is that okay? Is it okay to do that kind of thing? I think a lot of people on paper would say, yeah, I think that's okay. I would be okay with T-Bow too. The problem is the greater issues with that, the greater consequences. If T-Bow is no longer Biss, for example, right? Are you going to do Chambers of Xeric as much? You'll probably still do it. There's a lot of good drops from Chambers. You've got the Dragon Hunter Crossbow, you've got Ancestral Armor, you've got Elder Maul. Like, there's a lot of really good drops there. But the overall value of Cox is going to go way down, right? You're going to want to do it less. We saw this with
I think this is totally fine, because right now Cox has too many good items. So you can keep a couple items from Cox Biss, but they already put way too many good items in that raid anyways. So making some of those items not Biss anymore would make Cox not as good, and it's already too good. So I don't see an issue with that.
Scythe, or we saw this with Top, where the purples there have just generally become less and less useful over time. First, it was Rapier with the Fang. Like, you just don't care about Rapier anymore. Now it's the Sang. Sang is just kind of a useless item. You don't really care about it because I exist. So Top we have the Rapier, which is relatively useless. We have the Sang, which is relatively useless. And we have Justiciar, which is relatively useless. That leaves a Vernic and Scythe left. So the overall outcome in like progression and that kind of thing is that Tob is just not as important as the other raids to do. Especially if you hop in an Iron Man. Like, Tob is probably going to be the last raid you do. As an Iron Man,
dude, he's literally just saying the same shit that I'm saying right now too, guys. Like, I'm not doing Tob. Tob might be one of the very last things that I do, because only thing I need from there is Scythe, and I already know I'm in for 1,000 runs. And I'm like, I'm not doing 1,000 Tob runs right now. At the point of my Iron Man, I'm so much better off just spamming Cox, and I have at least 10 upgrades I can get from there. So that's where I'm at.
And you would much rather go do Chambers. It has so many useful purples, so many important unlocks, and T-Bow is so good. And then Toa as well has got every single purple from Toa is going to be impactful and important. Whereas with Tob, it's just like the purples there just don't matter as much. Like 75% of the purples in that raid are not as useful. So if the Mega Rare for a raid is now devalued and not super useful in the overall progression of the game, do you still do that raid? And other question, is it okay for that raid to be devalued? Like, is it okay that you don't really care about Tob that much, right? Like, in the grand scheme. Like, is that okay? I'm going to say a big fat no on that one. No, we cannot invalidate raids, and this is why. Raids are really rare pieces of content. We get one every 2 to 4 years at this rate, like, is when a raid drops. They are not a common piece of
4
content.
years.
You're not going to see one constantly, right? It takes a long time to make these, a huge amount of effort on Jagex's part. It takes a ton of work from the community to vote on all kinds of different rewards, different aspects of the raid. It's a lot of work that goes into this. So to completely invalidate a piece of content that takes as much work and that kind of represents old school RuneScape's like PVM as a whole. When you think of PVM in RuneScape, the first thing you think of is raids. That's the first thing you
Chat, did they cook with the design of TOB and fail on the rewards? Does anybody else feel that way? Because it sucks to me that Tob is considered the best raid, but I don't want to do it because the rewards are just not there. At the time, Tob rewards were insane. So they've invalidated Tob rewards over time then. Rapier and Sang were great on release. So the problem is what? Doom invalidated the Sang and the Fang invalidated the Rapier is the problem. Scythe and Avernic are still super relevant. Sang used to be 90 mil and now it's 19. I think they're trying to maybe avoid another TOB situation here with the new raid where they don't want to put out a banger raid and then have the rewards feel lackluster. At this point, I think I would be totally happy with them replacing some of the items from Cox as new bis. Like, do you guys want Ancestral to always be bis, or would you be fine with a new Ancestral if it dropped from the new raid? A new Ancestral would be fine. What about a piece that you can attach to Ancestral to make it slightly stronger, like Fortified Ancestral? That's all in the post? Okay, let's see what they talk about here.
Think of as Chambers, Tob, Tawa. Like, that's what's going to jump into your head. These are the like iconic pieces of content. You can't invalidate these, right? They're important to keep relevant because in a world where a raid comes out once a year, like every single year on the dot, maybe it's totally different, right? Maybe we can invalidate older raids, like it's fine. But there's not that many raids and they don't come out often enough for us to just be like getting rid of old ones for new stuff. Like this doesn't work for the game. This will not fit. Way older, like mid-level content. Like an example is Bandos, right? Bandos armor is kind of invalidated, not entirely, right? You need it to make Torva, that kind of thing. Bandos is not completely useless, but when Moons came out, Blood Moon, basically the same stats as Bandos. And again, in like Iron Man progression, a lot of people just skip Bandos. Like you just get Blood Moon and you just skip that, right? So it's a lot less useful than it used to be. That's okay because Bandos is really old jank content, right? It's not, okay, maybe like nostalgically, people think of that when they think of RuneScape, but it's not like, oh man, peak RuneScape is Bandos. Peak RuneScape is raid. It's raiding with the boys. Like that's what you think of when you think old school RuneScape. So invalidating like more mid-level type content works a little better. It's okay. Because that middle level content as well can just turn into like lower level content, right? Like Bandos is not completely useless. It might be a thing that you do in weird situations on your account. Like it's not just completely skipped. When endgame content becomes irrelevant, you generally just like completely skip it at that point. Think something like Fasani, where like none of the drops are useful. You kind of just don't do it. It works better to power creep stuff that's in the mid-level, low-level field versus like endgame raids, that kind of content. Like you don't really want to do that. It's also, if you do that, it's just a single boss that's becoming like less relevant versus like a whole host of bosses in a raid, right? It's a lot of content to invalidate. Moving on to this line down here where they're actually giving some basic ideas for like the design of the raid, which is interesting. They say, naturally, we're not going to divulge huge specifics here, but we think our current designs, and to some extent old school in general, is more fun with melee. The added pressure of proper movement, being able to drag yourself into an NPC's range by attacking to weave in and out of incoming damages, feels more dynamic than hitting from a distance. The implication here is that melee is going to be involved in the raid. They say the Fractured Archive is shaping up to be a raid where melee shines a little bit more than in Chambers of Zarek or Tombs of a Masket, and we do have melee styles. They don't currently sport a mega rare. And they say, could this be a reason for us to go down this route and prioritize a weapon that's fun to use in the raid itself? Is taking this approach for a reward that's fun in the raid at odds with a more holistic view on mega rares and overall game balance, like we've outlined above while talking about ranged. So they say crush and stab is what they're looking at, but effectively that boils down to crush because the Fang exists, right? The Fang might as well be a mega rare for stab. It's so ridiculously powerful. Are you going to add just Fang 2 that's just stronger than it? You could, but definitely makes a lot more sense to fill in crush. We just did the whole video on crush. Last video about crush's place in the game, how it's kind of a weaker melee style. So you can go check that out for the discussion on that. Going down a little bit further. It says, as it stands, we're most inclined towards a main hand melee mega rare. We'd like for melee to shine in the raid, so having a mega rare that leans into this, similar to Scythe at Tob, seems sensible. And crush is a style that's relatively undeserved. We'd like for melee to shine in the raid, so having a mega rare that leans into this, similar to the Scythe at Tob, seems sensible. And crush is a style that's relatively underserved at the top end, with the Scythe's limited crush bonus still winning out over dedicated crush weaponry in many instances. This is also an easy one to tie into the hard-hitting, relatively slow fantasy that existing mega rares tap into. With the context that they're looking at a crush mega rare, okay? Taking the last video into account that we talked about, I said that the Scythe shouldn't have its crush option removed. The reason I was saying that is not with the context of this in mind, right? I was saying removing the crush option off the Scythe does not suddenly make you use an Ink Mace at places. What it it does is make you use slash with Oathplate more often, which is a thing you already do, right? So removing crush doesn't change that. However, with a crush mega rare, now it changes things, right? Now, like Scythe has a few uses in the game on crush. You don't want the new mega rare. You want the new mega rare to have a clear reward space, a clear spot in the meta. So if you're going to add a new crush mega rare, and that's the direction they want to go with it, which I'm not sure is the right direction, but if that is what they want to do, if that is the direction they want to take it, yeah, you've got to cut the crush option off the other mega rare. Like, it just seems obvious, right? So flipping on what I said last time, right? Yeah, I think if they do this, they definitely should be removing the crush option off the Scythe just to give it a...
Dude, I did not expect him to say that. Like, that you would just completely remove the crush option from a Scythe. Dude, people would freak out, wouldn't they? If you just couldn't use crush anymore? I feel like people would get upset about that. It's been there for so long already. To just remove it now, and then now all of a sudden you have no crush weapon that you've had for a long time. The Scythe crush is ass anyway, so why would you remove it if it's not good? All right, let me see. Let me see if let him explain. Maybe he explains this.
Clear like position in the meta. And they say down here, we know there's been a lot of discussion lately around crush in a more general sense, and we do agree that there aren't. I know who was talking about that. I know that. And we do agree that there aren't many high-end use cases for crush at the moment. Similar to us adding more use cases to make the Scythe of It or shine, we'd absolutely look to consider crush more holistically when we go down this route, meaning more use cases, better stepping stones for progression, etc. And he said that's all we've got to say on Mega Rares for the time being. Quite a lot said. Quite a lot said. Before I move on with the blog, let me give like full thoughts on Mega Rares, because that's the end of what they talked about, right? I talked about how power creeping the Mega Rares is probably bad for the raid itself, right? You're probably going to do that raid a lot less, if none whatsoever. Imagine if Tob didn't have the Scythe as Biss, right? Imagine there's a Scythe 2 in the game, and you could just skip Scythe by going and getting Scythe 2, right? You would dip into Tob just to get Navernic, and that's it. That's the only thing you would do in that raid. You basically wouldn't do it, right? So that's a problem. You don't want to devalue past raids.
Timmy, think of the prime.
Like, you want people to still do the content. Okay, they have two other options you could take with Mega Rares, okay? First option is Upgradescape. Yay, Upgradescape. When you add this Crush Mega Rare, make it pretty good on its own. Make it have its own, like, use cases outside of Scythe, where it's a little better than Scythe in some cases, a little worse in some cases, but you stick them together, ding, 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 ding. You have the Scythe Giga Crush Ultra Melee weapon that works good on everything. It destroys everything. This is more powerful Scythe. It's got more use cases. It keeps everything relevant. Awesome, right? Every problem solved. The problem is that Upgradescape fucking sucks. And no one likes it, especially Iron Men, right? Do you want to require every single Mega Rare in the game moving forward? When they add Raids 8 in 25 years, do you want to also need every single Mega Rare you had from the last raids? Like, down the line, this gets ridiculous. I would say Avernic Treads right now are the most egregious Upgradescape we have in the game right now, right? So you have all of...
So here's the thing. I like Upgradescape to a certain point, but we are entering a possible infinitely horizontal game for the next 20, 30 years. And if you're not thinking, you have to be thinking about that. There can be some items that upgrade, but at some point there just needs to be just a new boot that's better than the old, that's better than Avernic, but it's only, and you like restart. You have like Prims 2, and the Prims 2 are better than the Avernic Tread Max. And then you restart that grind, and you have like Pegasian 2s. Because at some point, like, 20 people that are playing RuneScape 20 years from now are going to have to refarm all of the old content, and it's going to be too much. It's going to be too much Upgradescape if you Upgradescape everything. So I think they should be selective on what items are Upgradescaped, but I do like the idea of it for some things because it keeps the old content relevant. So you have to ask yourself, if you put a new BIS item in, what content are they skipping? If they just went and got this item, what content are they skipping? And should we make this an Upgradescape? And should Mega Rares be a part of Upgradescape? Right? And should you have to go back into Tob and get Scythe? Because right now, that's pretty much the only reason you're in TOB is for Scythe and Avernic. So if you put a new Scythe in the game, now you've almost completely invalidated TOB. So I think that maybe Scythe could be a good Upgradescape item because it makes you do TOB. And it's the only thing that's making you do TOB at this point. So that could be a good Upgradescape item, for example. Whereas eventually maybe we don't make everybody farm all 3 versions of the treads and do the max. Maybe eventually we just have 3 new BIS boots that they could skip, but we'll see.
These different upgrade paths. I didn't know they all had different names either, but like for each single pair of boots you put in, it gets a different name. So this is like 9 items in one. 2, you get the treads, which are good on their own, right? You can then add each BIS melee boot into it to make it better stats in that field. But each of these boots requires their own upgrade field, right? So Pegasians, you get a Pegasian crystal from Cerberus, awesome, but that upgrades Ranger boots, right? So now you have to go do medium clues to get Ranger boots. You got to do Cerberus to get a Pegasian crystal. Prims, you need Dragon boots. So you go get Dragon boots from Spiritual Mages, and then you go get the Primordial crystal from Cerberus. Eternal boots requires you to do Mage Training Arena. Oh boy! So you go do Mage Training Arena, get the Eternal boots. You're gonna upgrade that with the crystal from Cerberus. You're putting all of this together into one item. What happens when we get Treads 2 in 5 years, right? Are Treads 2 now going to put max treads into that? So to get the new treads too, you have to get the max treads, which are going to need the Ranger boots with the Pegasian crystal, and then the Prims with the... This is too much. This is too much. And what happens when Boots 3 comes down and Boots 4 comes down the line? Maybe Boots 4 is a combination of 3 boots from its own raid, right? So then you have boots. This gets super dumb down the line, and it has to get to the point where you're like, okay, we don't need to keep upgrading. Just let it lie. Let it die. It's okay. So maybe when Treads 2 comes out, they go, okay, Treads 2 is just a drop and it's good, right? And you don't have these 19 boots go into 27 more boots. Right? It just gets super confusing down the line, and it's super obnoxious if you're an Iron Man. Like, trying to get all of these different items is not a fun process. I don't really know why they didn't... My suggestion with Treads was to go with just the crystals from Cerb, so it's a little more reasonable, right? You have just the crystals from Cerb, you go kill Cerb, and you can upgrade the boots, and that's it. 2 bosses go into this upgrade. Instead, it's like 18 different sources. But the same thing applies to raids rewards. Like, the more complicated the upgrade path gets, the more obnoxious it gets down the line. So I really don't think this is a thing they should look into either. It does solve a bunch of problems. It does keep content relevant, but does it keep relevant in a way that's fun to like play? Not really. Not really, no. Other solution we haven't talked about in the and this is kind of what it looks like they're aiming.
Is it relevant in a way that's fun to play? Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I think that the boots in general are a decent idea, and it keeps a lot of the old content relevant. But it is a bit much, and I worry about like how long will these boots be BIS for, and then what do they do now? Are these boots going to be BIS for the next 10 years? If they're BIS for like the next 10 years, then yeah, they're worth the investment of everything you have to do to get it. But at some point, it's like they're going to need to add new boots into the game, and then it becomes an issue.
Towards is just keep stacking horizontally forever. Like everything fits into the game. You just keep making items more spread thinner and thinner and thinner. Everything fits into its own niche. You're getting items between items, like to the level of like Trident to Shrine of the Swamp to Sang Staff, right? Like every single style is filled out perfectly. There's a weapon for every single use case, and there's 18 different weapons for like every level of player that you are at: low level, mid level, high level. You could do this with Mega Rares. You can make it so this new Crush Mega Rare fits into the game. It's got half the usability of Scythe. Like it's got, you know, it's good at Araxor, it's good at Fasani, it's got a bunch of uses, but it's not ever going to be like as many places as the T-Bow. It's not ever going to be as many places as the Shadow. It's going to be a lot less used than Mega Rares in the past have been. And down the line, you could just keep doing this. You could add the Stab Mega Rare next raid, and you could add the Elemental Weakness Mega Rare after that, and then you could add the Ballista Mega Rare after that, and you could just keep going with this. You could keep on filling out more and more side grades, but it gets to the point where nothing feels special anymore. Nothing feels interesting. You're not excited anymore about rewards coming out because everything has so little use case and is so basic, or is good against so few bosses that you don't get excited about it. I would argue that a Mega Rare needs to be really powerful. If you're going to add a Mega Rare, and we're going to take the time to add a Mega Rare, which has a whole host of problems with balancing because it's such a powerful item, if you're going to add a Mega Rare, it had better blow my socks off. It had better be a sick item, right? I want to be hyped about a Mega Rare. I should not be going, well, that's, you know, that's kind of good in some cases. That's not how I think about a Mega Rare. When I think of a Mega Rare, I go, oh my God, I just got a T-Bow. Like, this changes everything. I want to say this changes everything.
Okay. No, I think that in general, most people feel this way about Mega Rares, which is why it's so hard to design one, which is why we're in this predicament of like, what is it? What is the next Mega Rare? And no one can really answer that. Because if you start putting in a crush weapon and a stab weapon, each time you add a new mega rare, now we're getting slightly less excited about it. And it's almost like there should be 3 mega rares always. And maybe we just need to replace one. So is that the argument here at this point, guys? Are we getting a crush and a stab mega rare, or are we getting T-Bow too? Has it pretty much boiled down to those 2 options? Replace the T-Bow? I mean, what do you do at this point? Do you replace the T-Bow, or do you just add another niche use case mega rare? Those are like the 2 options, right? If it has to be a weapon. And I don't think anybody has an answer on it yet.
The mega rare comes out, that should be what I say, right? This changes everything. And that kind of seems like not the direction they're looking at taking this, at least from this blog. So my argument is there's actually one last solution you can take, which is stop doing mega rares. You could just stop doing mega rares.
Yeah, this
mega
is
rares
the last
are
this is
horrendous
the last option.
to balance. There is so much headache that goes into it. We've seen it with the Shadow, where now
no
they
more mega
need
rares
to like rebalance it because it's impossible to add new gear items with it. But even with the other mega rares as well, they have issues as well. Anytime you add range strength, it's like, oh, T-Bow gets 3 more max hits. Anytime you add melee strength, it's like, oh, is this that 3 max hit breakpoint on the scythe? It's going to make it way, way stronger. Like, this is always something to keep in mind with weapons that scale so hard. Weapons that have 250%.
What about an Avernic mega rare where you combine all 3? Damn.
And 300% damage multipliers compared to normal weapons. When you add gear, it makes these weapons much, much stronger by comparison to other items, right? So it makes it really, really hard to balance them. Is that worth the effort on Jagex's part to keep adding these super hype, super powerful weapons? I think we could all say that we love mega rares, right? Me as well. Like, I love a super hype weapon, a very, very rare item to get out of a chest that is just like insanely powerful, changes the way you approach all kinds of content. Everybody loves mega rares, but do we love the repercussions of mega rares? Is it worth enough that I feel it's worth it to continue doing mega rares? Personally, I feel like I am in the boat of they should chill out on the mega rares. I really am. And it's kind of hard to say that because no matter what solution you want to go with, there's going to be problems, right? If you want to go Upgradescape, it's
I'm kind of on board with this, guys. I really think it's too soon to replace a T-Bow Scythe or Tumikin Shadow. I think that they still have a lot of weight and impact in RuneScape, and I don't feel like anyone wants those to be replaced yet. And I'm on the team right now of no mega rare in Raid 4. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's kind of where I'm leaning right now.
It's annoying. If you want to go like horizontal progression and just keep spreading the game out, that has problems too. Personally, I think what you could do is kind of the Toa approach, where it's like all of the rewards from Toa are pretty good. Make a well-rounded reward system for the raid. Have 1 or 2 items that are really, really good. You know how you've got like Masori Body and Toa? Something like that. A couple items that are, you know, just a step above the other items. You're like, okay, I just got that out of the chest. But nothing that's like super giant big ticket. I feel like works better for the game as a whole, balance-wise in the future. I'm curious what the community thinks about that. Because
right now, the things I'm thinking of right now for Raids 4 is maybe a ring slot or some type of jewelry kit where you could put multiple rings in your jewelry kit and then you can swap them out. Like which one you're using. Without taking a slot in your bag, some type of dual ring like that, or you could add another prayer. You can add an upgrade to the crush set. You could add an upgrade to ancestral, like fortified ancestral or something like that, or you could start making items from Cox. You can start adding better options than the options that are in Cox to make some of the items from Cox less impactful, and one of those would be the prayers already. So those are kind of the things we've talked about in the stream that we've bounced around.
I think that's where the camp I fall into. I think everybody's got their own camp that they fall into with one of the solutions I've talked about. The other big issue with mega rares is when you add them to the game, it suddenly sends that style like way out of whack. Like when Shadow came out, now Magic is in a totally different place. Like as a whole, Magic now becomes something that you can use basically everywhere. Whereas before, Magic was kind of like side grade. You'd use it when there's a lot of targets, like with Ancients or as like utility spells, and that's about all you do with it. Maybe occasionally use a powered staff, but not if you can avoid it. You don't do that. Shadow comes out, and now that's completely changed, right? Everything is different. Anytime you add a mega rare, it throws the whole balance of the game out of whack, and you've got to keep all of this stuff in mind. There's so many problems design-wise with Mega Rares. Personally, I feel like the problems that come with Mega Rares are really just not worth all of this added effort. I think it holds Jagex back a lot on like what they can do creatively. It causes so many problems down the line where they have to spend dev time to go fix stuff like with the Shadow. I don't think it's worth all the headache, honestly, at this point. I think I would much rather that they make solid, well-rounded rewards that I'm going to use long down the line, but nothing that is just utterly blowing the balance of the game out of the water. You know, to the point where you like can't even add 3% mage damage to an item at Mocha because the Shadow is too strong, right? Like it makes it so hard to add equipment down the line when you have these insanely powerful items as well. I'm not saying to go back and like remove Mega Rares, but we have it all filled out with every style now. Personally, I think it's just like if they add something, it's going to be a weak side grade and not be super hyped like it has been in the past, or it's going to be so strong that it invalidates old content, which I don't like either of those, personally. I know people are going to say like, oh no, Monkey, didn't you say that like Raid should be the place where like it changes content and it's like, you know, changing the meta and like really cool new stuff is getting added? Yes, I did say that. But Mega Rares specifically cause so many issues down the line, invalidate so much content. I don't want old, really fun content that I've enjoyed so much to become content that is not worth doing anymore. That does not make me happy. Where I don't feel like that's a thing that happens with other like raid rewards. Like Lightbearer is like the best ring in the game, right? But I don't feel like Lightbearer invalidates anything. Like I still can bring a Lightbearer and go do any content in the game that I used to do and it'll still be like just as good. But with something like a Shadow or a Scythe or a Tivo, like that's just, it's so strong and so powerful balance-wise that it just kind of blows the game apart. I'm going to move on from the Mega Rare topic. There's other stuff in the blog to talk about. They talk about armor sets. If you have thoughts on Mega Rare, talk about in the comments. I'm very interested. If anybody else feels the same way I do with like, hey, maybe we just shouldn't.
We should do a poll, guys. We should do a poll. What should the poll be for Raids 4? Should Raids 4 should drop either A, no Mega Rare at all, and a new Scythe, T-Bow, or Shadow, or a Crush or Stab Mega Rare? Right? Those are the three options. So either no Mega Rare at all, Scythe, T-Bow, Shadow upgrade, or 2.0. Scythe, T-Bow, Shadow 2.0, or a Crush or Stab Mega Rare. Right? Those are the options here? What? There are way more options than that? What? Tell me. Type it. I'll add it in. What would the what other Mega Rare? You guys are typing items that'll probably be in the raid, but they're not Mega Rares. A two-handed stab weapon, that's in there. Crusher, Stab, Mega Rare. Ring or Prayer Scroll, those are not Mega Rares. Those are just items that are going to drop. Raids for Mega Rare. Okay, we're going to do this. Ready? Raids 4 should have either no Mega Rare, a Scythe, and a better Scythe, T-Bow, or Shadow. So basically Scythe, T-Bow, or Shadow 2.0, or a Crush or Stab Mega Rare, which would probably be a Crush Mega Rare. All right, start poll. What do you guys think Raids 4 should have? Pull it up. We'll see what happens. Right now, it looks like you guys are leaning more towards no Mega Rare, and instead you just focus on smaller items that would increase things that are already in the game. Whether it's a new ring slot, new prayers, a shield that does plus strength damage, a ballista, a crossbow upgrade. I don't know, just other shit. Maybe you have a new twisted buckler. You have maybe a new Elder Maul and just stuff, some other shit. I don't know. No Mega Rare only wins because of Hive Mind for no monkey opinions. No, that's not true at all. We've been talking about this for a long time. Nobody can really think of a Mega Rare that everyone will agree on. So when you can't agree on something, usually you just do nothing at all. That's usually the best solution. If you can't, if 70% of the vote doesn't pass, or 70% of people can't agree on what it should be, then usually the best choice is to do nothing. You don't have to do something. You don't have to add items to the game. Otherwise, you're forcing it and it's going to be worse. So you either add a Crush Mega Rare. It seems like nobody wants new Scythe. No one wants the existing Mega Rares replaced. So you either add a Crush Mega Rare or you don't add it at all at this point. I think those are what the two options have come down to for the new raid.
Do mega rares. I'd be curious what people think about it. No matter what with a mega rare, I feel like someone is going to be upset. Like someone is not going to be happy with the direction they take it because they are backed into a corner with design. So I'm curious how people feel like they should approach a mega rare in the future, like what they should do with it. Okay, moving on to the armor section, which is the last section. We had a discussion about Oathplate and how I think it's really, really strong in the last video. So we'll see what they say here. They say armor sets tend to occupy the rare reward space from raids, meaning you'll see pieces more commonly than a mega rare, but completing a full set can still see your kill count skyrocket. For this reason, we believe it's important for armor from raids to be best in slot and avoid making them too niche. Stuff like completing Ancestral set at Chambers is going to be about the same time to complete as a T-bow. Even though the pieces are more common, very rare to get those 3 pieces that you need. A lot of times, the last thing you'll see an Iron get is 1 piece of Ancestral that they were missing. On my main, the only items I'm missing are a T-bow and the Ancestral hat. So that kind of aligns. Basically, they give some bullet points, like design-wise, what they're thinking of with a raid armor. So they say ranged armor feels out of the question. Masori featured in the most recent raid, and with Dozana's quiver, coupled with rewards from Blood Moon Rises, we don't think ranged as a style needs any straight-up number increases here. Yeah, Blood Moon Rises is giving a huge boost to T-bow and all ranged weapons in general, so adding even more ranged armor does sound kind of crazy. So definitely not that. Melee armor feels a touch more gray. We feel that it could be too soon for an upgrade here, since Oathplate is still quite fresh as a style-specific armor. I don't know if I agree. It is style-specific armor, but it's armor you use everywhere because Slash is really good for melee. So I don't know. I get what they're saying there, but I don't fully agree with that. It's just really broken. While Torva still maintains a high value and serves as an endgame target for many players despite not coming from a raid, Inquisitor likely could be improved upon, but where does that leave the Nightmare of Ashihama's place in the game? If we went down the armor upgrade route, does Upgradescape feel appropriate for a raids reward? No. I personally don't feel like Masori needed to combine with Armadillo whatsoever. I thought that was really, really annoying and unnecessary. Why do we need to keep Armadillo relevant? I don't know. Feels like just because they did that with Torva. Now they're asking everybody. Everybody has said, should we make it so Ink can be combined with Justiciar or something like that? You have 2 terrible, like on paper, that sounds good, right? We have 2.
That would give TOB more usage than it has currently if Justiciar had a use, another use, if it could be combined with Inquisitor.
2 terrible armor sets. Combine them together, make it better. Both are now relevant. Yay. Do we want Ink to be relevant? Is that a thing we want? Now you have to go kill nightmares. Is this good? Does this improve the game? I don't think so, personally. I think nightmares, the way Nightmare works is you require such specific gear to kill it, and the drops are just so rare. They are so ridiculously rare. Do we want to include Fasani in the meta progression? It's kind of nice that it's fallen out of style. I personally think. The fact that you don't have to do Fasani is kind of nice. Also, with the last video, obvious problem of Crush is not used as much as other styles. So if we add better ink in some capacity, not going to be the best armor. It still is going to be Oathplate by far. That's why it felt like Oathplate coming from Yama, which is like the first endgame boss that you're going to do, didn't really fit super well because this is like raid tier level armor that's coming from a not so crazy endgame boss, right? So this is the problem.
Does it almost feel like Oathplate should have came from Raids 4? Because it's that good? I kind of feel like that. I kind of feel like the Yama gear was too good for Yama.
They say magic armor could make sense, but it's awkward. Ancestral is 9 years old at this point, just like the T-bow. It's very, very old. Very, very old. It's not too soon to upgrade, but could we upgrade in a way that doesn't completely invalidate it? We could go down the upgrade route, but our concerns around whether or not that's appropriate for raids still stand. Could we? I really don't want to combine Ancestral with a different set either. It's more of an issue with armor sets to do this than it is with like main weapons, because you have to get 3 pieces. Unless you do the thing where it's like Oathplate, you can break down pieces into like Ancestral. Let's say you could rip Ancestral apart into Ancestral Thread, and then you use Ancestral Thread with like these new robes and it upgrades it. You could do that. It's just annoying to get those individual pieces, and every raid requiring every other raid to be done in order to keep everything relevant, I feel like is really, really arbitrary and annoying. So personally, not a huge fan of that either. Could we explore a side grade that excels at a specific niche? Perhaps something that boosts the power of the standard Lunar or Arceus spellbook? If so, does that feel appropriate considering Virtus already does this for Ancients, but isn't a raids tier reward? Maybe. Some people might be thinking as, you read this and you're like, oh, well, maybe the solution to both of these is the same, right? Maybe you just add Giga Armor, and that's your mega rare. Maybe that's what you do. So now you have the cool armor set for the raid, and it's cool enough to be the mega rare. Maybe you can do that. Not a chance. Just doesn't work. for multiple reasons. First of all, do you just get like the set out of the chest? Do you just get like Giga Torva out of the chest and it's like, oh, you get all 3 pieces?
What is he saying? That that raids 4, you would have a new set of armor that's better than all the armors that it currently exists. So it's better than Inquisitors, Oathplate, and Torva, or it basically combines all of them into one. So you don't need any of them anymore. You definitely can't do that.
Or do I have to find 3 separate like mini mega rares to complete the set, and maybe it gets a set bonus then? That sounds so annoying to go hunt for. Like mega rares are already so rare, and you're gonna make it like even more annoying on top of that to like complete a set. Not great. Also, the problem of invalidating 3 equipment slots at once is kind of not great, right? Now you have every single armor slot is filled and done for like the next several years at minimum, right? You're not going to add Torva 3 anytime soon. So if Torva 2 is added with the raid, you've just like completely cut off reward space on 3 different slots at once. Like not exactly what Jagex is looking for. Okay, well, since we're talking about equipment, let's go through everything else. Double ring slot is a really common thing everybody says. Problem I said earlier is an unlock sucks. You can't resell it. So it's got the scroll problem where it'll either become completely cheap and useless. It doesn't have that...
Why does it need to be a set? It could be a Turbo Omega Fighter torso. That, I think, could be a cook. I don't think that they need to have a full set of armor in the raid. They could just have a Giga chest piece. I think that that would work.
Economic throughput. You're not buying and reselling items. You're not doing a rebuild with it. Doesn't work super well to be an unlock. Also, just having 2 ring slots is just boring. You're going to put on Light Bearer and an Altor. Wow. That's crazy. Doesn't exactly get me hyped about using it. Like, yes, that's going to add X% to my DPS. That's cool. And it is very, very strong. But, you know, that's not getting me out of bed in the morning. That's not like changing the way I approach the game in any way. Another really common thing I see people say is they mention Turmoil. Turmoil, if you don't know from RuneScape 3, it's what Nex uses at the end of the fight. You know, she sucks your stats when she punches you. That's what Turmoil does. It's a Giga Piety prayer. It saps the enemy's stats and gives it to you. It was like way, way, way higher stats than Piety. And we know how strong prayers are, right? When you unlock Rigor, you get such a massive power spike. Imagine like that, but plus 50%, but for melee, right? So like much more impactful for a melee prayer. And then it's a permanent unlock. So all the problems I just said with a permanent unlock, you can't resell it, into one of the most broken prayers in the game. Like that's not exactly ideal either. Why not add Soul Split? Oh, we could do a whole video about how bad Soul Split is. Soul Split is when you attack enemies, you get some health back. It's like a permanent Blood Fury effect with an overhead prayer, and it just is a thing. First of all, old school RuneScape, you would be able to tick heat with this. So you'd have to make it like a % chance to heal you or something to make it just not utterly break the game and make it so you never have to pray at all, or you just tick heat every single attack. We also know all the problems that Blood Fury is added, and that's just for the melee style. Imagine if a blowpipe was healing you every time. Just no Soul Split. Please no Soul Split. Even if they... Do
you guys... A lot of people don't like Blood Fury. Are we against items that heal us when attacking? Are we against those kind of items? Do they just kind of break the game too much? Items that like self-heal you? Very against that. I'd rather just have max hits. Yes, if it's 100% chance. Infinite sustain is too strong. Yeah, I agree with that too. I've never had a Blood Fury, so I don't know how strong it is. Blood Fury is good if you want to use it, but it takes forever to get. So it's almost not worth. But having a Blood Fury that worked with... I mean, technically, you have blood magic and you're able to soul siphon yourself with magic. And I like that in the game. And then you heal with Tebow spec. I mean, with blowpipe spec. I mean, these types of things are good, I feel like. So he's just saying you don't want a Blood Fury that works with a blowpipe.
Tuned you down for old school. This is not it. This is not a good addition to the game either. Okay, could we add boots? Probably not. Treads, I would argue, are like mega rare tier for the boot slot. It's insanely strong. It's from a new piece of endgame content. You don't really want to invalidate that. Let's not do boots. Doesn't really make any sense. For the same reason as not adding ranged armor, you don't really want to add boots as a mega rare. Ammo. What about some kind of ammo? No, it doesn't really work. So that means, you know, the problem people have with like dragon arrows and dragon darts. Now you have that, but it's like a 1 in 200 to get a roll at some ammo. Like kind of like Hydra, I guess, with like dragon knives where like you get a bunch of ammo. That's like a very rare drop. People that are rich will use it all the time and no one else will touch it ever for any reason, and you'll just sell it to people. It's just, it doesn't have that same hype factor as like a mega rare. You can't really do ammo. Definitely not. What about amulets? What about amulets? Does that work? Or like jewelry in general. Currently, all the jewelry in the game is a drop from a Slayer mob in some way. Like Rancor comes from Araxor, or Torture, all of the Zenites come from Gorillas, like that kind of thing. Occult is from Smoke Devils, so that's kind of the place where Slayer stands, is that you unlock jewelry from doing it. So it would be a little bit weird to change that up. Not necessarily out of the question. I checked it on Reddit. I'm not going to like tear this apart. I don't think it's a good idea, but I like that we're kind of thinking outside the box, because that's what Jagex needs right now, right? They need some help. I had someone suggest prayer armor, like armor that scales with prayer. They also suggest like a mega rare weapon that scales with prayer as well. Cool thinking, right? You could make it like weight even. You could make it scale off your weight bonus. You know how Griffin like checks your weight? You could do weird stuff like this. The problem is, does that add anything to the game?
Prayer
Is that an
scaling
interesting
weapon
thing to build around? Not really, because if you do prayer bonus, right, as an example, and your weapon scales off your prayer bonus, all that means is instead of trying to maximize the strength of your equipment, you just try to maximize prayer. So all that does is make all the prayer gear stand in for max strength gear. And yes, that would shoot the value of like Sunfire up. You could buy like 20,000 sets of that and merch it really quick before they add this. Does that change the way you approach content besides, oh, I will wear prayer gear instead of my melee gear? Doesn't really change anything about content whatsoever. This gives me the vibe of like, you know, it sounds cool on paper and, you know, you're just like, oh, this is a cool idea. But what impact does this have on the game as a whole? It gives me the idea that like this person is more like, you know, trying to make rewards based on vibes versus like the overall like context of the game. Right? Which is what I try to do. I try to make trying to think of rewards that would fit the game as a whole, be balanced, be interesting, be engaging, versus just like, haha, wouldn't this be neat if prayer was useful? Like, it doesn't really change the game in an interesting way. So yeah, this is kind of not a good area to look into for rewards.
I don't think that works fundamentally with the game. I think that if you're taking prayer, you should be sacrificing damage to have prayer. I don't think that bringing prayer should give you damage, because now you're compromising the fundamentals of RuneScape, which is trading one thing for another. So I don't like that.
With like super weird gimmicky stuff like prayer. Other thing that I've seen people suggest is like giga tanky stuff, like the ultra mega shield of hyper stop damage, or like the giga hyper armor justy set. This kind of thing is not useful. We've talked in videos before about why defense is just not super used in PvM. The problem is that the faster you kill something, the faster it stops hitting you. So having high DPS in a way is just better than having high defense. Not only do you kill it faster, it also just stops hitting you faster, right? So you take less damage overall when you kill stuff faster versus blocking that damage, right? So I see people saying stuff like, oh, why don't you make Justy actually have some...
So that is where Blood Moon, actually, the Blood Moon boss in Perilous Moons, like defense actually is better than offense, because if he doesn't hit you, then he doesn't regain health. And so that's why everyone stacks defense. Like those type of bosses would make tank gear more useful. And I could see them adding more bosses like that to make tank gear useful again.
Some use in the new raid, that kind of thing. Like with Moons, I saw like a Reddit comment like this. Moons, the mechanic around the defense is not interesting. It works okay as like a low level boss where like it's kind of just like a gear check where it's like go do some barrows and then you can start doing this content. But what does having a high defense add to content? Does it make you change the way you approach that content? Does it make you do something in an interesting way besides like forcing armor switches every attack, which no one wants to do? Let me tell you, as somebody that does armor switches in raids like challenge mode, Chambers of Zarek and that kind of thing, not super fun to do. Every single attack is swapping a shield on or swapping armor on, right? So it's not a super engaging, fun area to add content. Okay, but would you ever camp like giga tanky armor? I mean, you could get it ridiculous to the point where you could just cheese all content in the game, but that's not interesting either. Like being able to cheese content, being able to skip content because you're super tanky, it's just not super fun. Old school RuneScape does not work super well with high defense. It doesn't have the same systems as other games where they'd have like damage soaking or like, you know, partial damage reflection or that kind of thing. That's just not really a thing old school has. So it would require like a full rework of defense to make tank armor or like shields interesting. Now you could make offensive shields potentially, and that could be cool. Like some shields that reflect damage or have some kind of special effect, like spikes on them, like that kind of thing, that maybe they give you less DPS in general than a Vernic, but if it's something that hurts you often, maybe that's like it could be interesting. I don't know. So more offensively based gear around taking damage could be cool, but just stuff that makes you tanky does not work super well in old school either. Just from experience with like the PVM in the game. This is not a thing that you really care about that much. Just wrapping the video up. If you've got ideas for potential solutions to stuff that I haven't thought of, I personally feel like jewelry has a lot of potential in like a mega rare space or that kind of thing. We've talked about it a little bit on stream. If you've got an idea for something that could be more unique and potentially could fit into that space, leave a comment or just let Jagex know in whatever way you can. They are looking for feedback, obviously, or they wouldn't have made a post like this. Like, hey guys, we're kind of stuck on this. If you've got ideas, let us know, or let us know what the vibes are. Talk with Jagex and let them know, because they definitely want to know. They say that once we're confident that we're on the right lines, we'll get to work on specific reward concepts and hope to have them in front of you before summer so that we have ample time to refine designs and make sure that your time in the Fracture Archive feels more than worthwhile. So they got a bit of a time crunch. I mean, summer's coming up pretty quick here. Get your ideas out, help them out. Maybe you guys can come up with some ideas that are better than what Jagex has thought of.
Awesome. I know Jagex.
Also, sneak this in at the very end. Very last.
Dude, Jagex is like, yo, if you guys got any ideas, like, we're listening because we're trying over here. And the game is kind of evolved to the point where we're at that fork in the road. You know, it's not as easy as it used to be. We've already designed. We're hitting that vertical limit, as they say, in game design, where we don't know how much higher we can push this thing. And this is interesting because I'm a huge fan of horizontal game design, but inevitably you hit this point in the game design where you have stretched it horizontally as far as you can go, and at some point there needs to be more verticality, and you just have to start replacing stuff. It's a fun challenge to try and think about, but no one's gonna, like, so many people are just not gonna agree with so many different takes. So if you guys want to take a crack at it and try to help Jagex, man, please do. It is a hard problem to solve.
Last thought, they say before we sign off, we'd like to quickly say that we know there are questions raised by our Summit news post around limited builds, and still some mentions of changes to the Shadow in case we explore Magic Reward Space. We haven't forgotten about these, and we'll address both in the coming months, but want to make sure that we're getting off on the right foot with arguably the toughest part about releasing a raid. Potential Shadow rework coming fairly soon. Interesting. That'll be a video for sure when that hits, so be looking out for that. That's it for the video. We're definitely going to be live, like, basically right after I post this. If you want to come in and have a discussion in the chat about what they could be doing with rewards, maybe you've got an idea, go ahead and pop in. I will be on Twitch and YouTube streaming, so you can always check those. Leave a like if you liked it, and or subscribe. Bye! Mwah!
Good video, Gnome. Good video, sir. That was a banger blog post talk. I enjoyed talking about the mega rares with you guys. It sounds like no mega rare is what people were. 62% were saying no mega rare what should be in raids 4, which I personally was not expecting it to go that way. But after many talks, you know, with the chat, with community, people can't really decide on something that feels mega rare worthy, and it's also too early to replace Scythe, T-Bow, and Shadow. So here's the results of that poll, of just people here in the chat that voted, and no mega rare ended up winning. So maybe they should just focus on other items and holes that the game kind of has in it, or maybe replacing some of the gear from Cox to make it not have as many good items as it does. I did kind of like the idea of the Justicar being merged with something to make TOB have a bit more use case. Or they add a boss in the game that makes it so you almost need the tankiness from Justicar to clear it, because it just doesn't have. It's not like an exciting reward to get. It's like, oh, I got Justicar. Like, okay, that's a -1 bank slot. You know, like I don't really know where I would use that. So making that armor relevant in a way could be something cool. I like that idea today that was popped out. Maybe they could upgrade in raids 4. There could be an upgrade to make TOB items better. A rapier upgrade could be kind of crazy, but you know, you don't want to invalidate Fang either. So I'm not sure, man. They've got a lot of stuff they got to talk about and cook up with raids 4, but I'm so excited about it. It's just funny that, you know, raids 4 comes out in like what, 8 months, and they're like, yeah, guys, so anybody have any ideas for like what items this raid could drop? And we're like, yo, that that raid's coming out soon, right? Like it's still coming out, right? You know, it's kind of funny.